Welcome to the Core Brief, not the version of the world you hear on cable news. I'm a global affairs analyst and cultural theorist, and I'll show you the drivers behind world events because they are not random. They are shaped by culture, history, and psychology. What nations do make the news. Why they do it, that's what you'll find out here. This week, we're looking at how Trump's blundering, miscalculations, and incompetence are driving a new European superpower. So here's what happened. Trump wanted to show Europe he was in charge. He threatened to pull out of NATO. He delayed Ukraine aid. He backed Putin. He assumed Europe would fold. Instead, it united. For the first time in modern history, Europe is acting like a great power on its own terms, without the United States. And this is the backstory. From the start of his first term, Trump treated NATO like a business deal gone bad. And when he returned to office in 2025, he took it a step further, pausing US aid, blocking joint commitments, and supporting Vladimir Putin. Trump assumed Europe would submit. Instead, the European united, not against the US, but for itself. The EU now has a €150 billion joint defense fund. Brussels is planning for a pan-European arms production, bypassing the US. Member states are committed to increasing defense spending to 5% of their GDP. Switzerland, traditionally neutral, announced talks about participating in the defense structure. And when the US held up Ukraine aid, the EU continued funding Kiev without Washington. But it's the cultural perspective that explains these actions. Trump's approach is a combination of high power distance and particularism. That is, he expects European leaders to obey him unquestionably, even at their own peril, for the sole reason that he is the US president. Trump requires one way loyalty in which lesser powers are expendable. Trump sets the rules, but they do not apply to him. Outcomes depend on how much Trump likes or dislikes the other leader. Alliances are not partnerships to Trump, they are one sided leverage points. The EU is structurally and culturally universalist and collectivist, the opposite of Trump. The EU is built on the assumption that rules, not personalities, govern cooperation. Trump undermines that foundation, but instead of collapsing, the EU strengthens. This is an outcome of its collectivist nature, joint funding, shared planning, and a pivot from dependency to self determination. But it's not all rosy. Spain negotiated an opt out. Hungary's dictator Orbán continues to block policy decisions, and far right populist parties are rising in several countries. The issue is that Europe is not a single culture, and while overall it's universalist, many countries are particularist, meaning they expect exceptions. The EU has a shared vision, but unfortunately not a shared path. And here's why it matters. Europe's move towards defense independence is one of the most significant global shifts since the Cold War. For 80 years, the United States underwrote NATO, guaranteeing Europe's security and steering its foreign policy. Trump ended that. Now the future of NATO depends not on the US, but on Europe. Trump has made it clear US support is no longer guaranteed, it's conditional and probably temporary. That shift has global consequences. As Europe reclaims power, US influence shrinks. The EU will chart its own course on China, trade, climate, and sanctions. And it's already happening. A sovereign digital policy, a carbon border tax, a firm rejection of US extraterritorial sanctions. All of this means freedom from US domination. As the EU builds its own financial systems, the dollar dominance will fade. Funding Ukraine without US help is what post American multilateralism looks like. This isn't just a European shift, it's the start of a new global power structure. So, what's next? In the coming decade, the EU is likely to emerge as a true global power in defense, economics, diplomacy, and leadership. We can expect the EU will create its own command structure. It will coordinate with NATO, but it will not depend on it. France and Germany will lead this push through a strategic autonomy doctrine focusing on shared weapons and production. NATO may still exist, but not under US leadership. At the same time, we can expect the EU will expand its security partnerships with countries like Japan, India, and key African nations. Expect the euro as a reserve currency to grow, supported by new payment systems designed to bypass SWIFT and US oversight. This shift will weaken American control over global finance. Europe will continue to lead in global rule setting, defining standards in digital governance, privacy, antitrust, and AI. On climate, the EU's carbon border tax will pressure trading partners to match EU policies or lose access to the market. Additionally, the EU will act increasingly independent globally, sometimes aligning with the US, but not always. New alliances will merge grounded in law, investment, and sustainability, not American leadership. This isn't just Europe preparing for US withdrawal. It may be Europe replacing US global leadership. Join us for more at culturalperspective.com.